Hey, this is Troy Taylor with the Championship Football Coaches Clinic podcast, sponsored by First Down Playbook, Rack Coach, Tip the Spear, the Top Hopper, and Sports Workbook. I just got cussed out again by Coach McNally. I'm trying to get him hooked up with some virtual reality so he can go to a Eagles concert in his own house. And Dr. Dutch is on today. And so happy to have you, Doc, here today. For the people that don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, it's great to be here. So my background is I spent 20 years in Army Special Operations as a Green Beret commander, also some time in the Ranger Regiment. And after I left the service, I used the GI Bill, like most veterans do, to go back to school and got a PhD in performance psychology. And from there, I started doing performance coaching with athletes and universities. And that led directly to the development of the VR system that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so when we spoke on the phone, you told me a little bit about you working with Stanford's football program. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So that was my first gig, straight out of the PhD program. I happened to run into a couple of Stanford coaches at a Glazer football clinic that I was talking at, and they invited me to do a mental toughness and poise workshop for their coaches and their players that were getting ready to go to the combine and do pro days. And that was the year McCaffrey went into the NFL. So I went down to the farm and put on a workshop for him, and Coach Shaw was really happy with how that went and showed me, gave me a tour of the football facilities there. And, at Stanford, beautiful facilities. And he showed me their VR system, their virtual simulation training system. And VR really kind of got started at Stanford with a program with the Stanford VR lab and one of their grad assistants. And so I was looking at the program and I said, well, this is really cool, Coach. How do you train with it? And he said, well, we sit and watch it like video. And one of the things that we did in special operations and really throughout the Army is we rely heavily on simulation trainers, right? Bleed in the simulator before you bleed on the battlefield. And it's done remarkable things for the capabilities of our armed forces. So I told them a little bit about that, and I said, well, you have to interact with the system. You have to make decisions in it. If you can, you have to be up and moving. If you're just watching it, then you might as well just watch regular game video. And he asked if I could build something like that. And so I partnered with one of his coaches, and we spent a couple of years there on the farm perfecting the system.
I want to ask you, before you get into the virtual reality, about mental toughness. Like, toughness means a lot of different things to different people. But when someone tells me that a kid is tough, that means to me, it's the greatest compliment you could ever give someone, but they can overcome adversity. That, when things don't go their way, they don't quit. So, like, what is your definition of mental toughness or toughness, and how do you make kids tougher?
Yeah, so that's a great question. That's where I started, right? Is what is the definition of mental toughness? Because if you talk to 100 different people, you're going to get 100 different answers. And as a applied psychologist and research psychologist, you have to be able to define what you're training so you can measure it, right? It's got to have definables and measurable. So here's my definition. This is the definition I use at Stanford, I use at UCLA, and I use with the private clients that I coach all the way from high school up into the Olympics. Mental toughness is remaining performance task focused, regardless of internal, external, or environmental conditions. longer than your opponent. And that's a key aspect, because if you ask an athlete or if you ask a soldier, hey, you just have to be mentally tough, like forever, always. That's an impossible ask. And that's really, from a performance side, not what we want. You need to be mentally tough, remaining task focused on your performance objective, regardless of, whether you're tired, whether you're injured, whether the battle's going against you, whether it's snowing, raining, 90 degrees, longer than your opponent, however long that is. That may be 30 seconds, right? If you're clearing a room, you have to be mentally tough for 30 seconds, because after that fight's over. If you're taking a town, it may be longer. If you're on a deployment, it may be months. So the idea is to manage that mental toughness. And as you develop it with the idea that we don't expect you just to always be mentally tough. You need to do it within the confines of what you're trying to accomplish, and at such a high degree that you dominate your opponent.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about mental toughness, like I automatically thought, it's the ability to overcome adversity. But Nick Saban talks about rat poison, and probably the hardest thing to be able to handle is success. When people tell you that you're great or you're the best thing ever, like that's what Nick Saban calls rat poison. Do people talk about mental toughness when it comes to success or being told that you're good or great, not just, overcoming a defeat or overcoming, losing in a game?
Yeah. So, from the psychology point of view, and I'll geek out a little bit as a psychologist, I would maybe classify that more as resilience, right? That long-term, how you engage with your environment. And how do you stay immune to those types of influences that move you off your goals? Mental toughness, I would define in a much more limited way in a task focus. What do you have to do right now in this moment to be successful, right? And that may be holding a block, or it might be not getting distracted by a rush so you can get through your progressions. It's much more present moment focused. And something like Coach Saban said, and all the respect for him and all other coaches, I personally would classify that as more resilience. And by classifying it like that, then you train resilience. It's a different process.
What is different about the process to training resilience to toughness?
Yeah, so mental toughness, you're going to focus very much on a specific performance task while introducing distress. So a function of that is what's called distress tolerance. And a really good example of that is right now you're trying to do a podcast. And if I asked you to hold your breath for 30 seconds, you would start to forget about your podcast as your body started hurting for oxygen. So when we do mental toughness training, it's the same thing with poise training. Poise has a slightly different definition. We introduce that distress in the moment while you're trying to perform your skill or your task to help you learn how to focus through that distraction, right? So that would be how you would train mental toughness. Resilience is more a set of life skills and the way you view your environment and yourself in your environment, right? So the ability to stay not too high, not too low, what a lot of athletes would call, if you listen to Russell Wilson, he says, remain neutral. So that's a resiliency tactic. It's a resiliency tool. Stay kind of middle of the road. Don't get up. Don't get too high up. Don't get too low. Don't believe the things that people are saying about you, positive or negative. And keep in mind that you have to be intentional about your life and what you want to accomplish, your goals, and realistic, and not use what we call hope as a method, right? I hope this is going to turn out. I hope that I'm the greatest player in the world. I hope that people say great things about me, because that's not being intentional. You want to set up the clear goals and stepping stones in your life that are concrete and that you control. And it's also a lot about controlling those, learning how to control the controllables, which you hear all the time.
Worry about the things you can control.
Yeah.
So is that why, like Coach Saban, some of the harder coaches, they're so hard on their players? Like, it's like the military. I mean, the drill sergeant. I mean, he's not, patting you on the butt, telling you did a good job. I mean, it's like, wow, 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 wow. Like, yeah. Talk about that. Are they building?
Well, for sure. I'll give you an example I use often in my practice. Is so Ranger School, right? It's a voluntary school. When I went through, it was 72 days. They change it. It goes back and forth. It's slightly less, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many days it is. It's miserable.
God said it's the worst.
Yeah, and you don't. Yeah, you don't sleep. You don't eat. You're moving 23 and a half out of 24 hours a day, and it just goes on. So when you're at that, the idea of that school is to show you how much you can endure while staying performance task focused. Because the standard for the operation, the raid, the ambush, the recon, the standard of how you have to perform doesn't change. The only thing that's changing are the conditions that you're in. You're hungry, you're sleepy, you're inevitably hurt somewhere. It's raining or it's hot or it's freezing, whatever. And so it's very much that remaining performance task focused, regardless of internal, external, environmental conditions, right? So middle of Ranger School, and you're like, this is so terrible that this will never be what it's like in combat, right? It just can't be. And so fast forward nearly 20 years, and I'm leading a task force into Iraq, and we don't stop for 11 days. Like we're moving for 11 days. Not much sleep, if any, not much food. And we get to what they call the tactical pause, and everybody kind of comes together. And without saying anything, we just look at each other and start laughing. And we're like, because we lost probably 10 pounds, so we look emaciated. And we're like, this is just like Ranger School. And it had been 11 days. So at that moment, you could just kind of take stock in it. It's like, I can do this for another 60 and I'll be fine. Yeah, this is no big deal. And coaches do the same thing. And when we would do training events, we would always try to make them harder than combat. Because then when you get to combat, or if you're a football coach, when you get to that game, it's easy, right? You can focus on the in-game adjustments because you're not worried about being tired or overwhelmed or anything like that. The thing that I would say to coaches thinking about doing this is it's got to be mental and physical, right? Now, one of our clients is UCLA, and I'll tell you an incredible thing that Chip Kelly does with his team is he always keeps them mentally engaged. So they're trying to think fast through complex problems while they're being gassed, like while they're moving at that fast Chip Kelly pace. He's challenging them mentally, and that's the difference. If it's just physically hard, it's just physically hard. But this is a game of thinkers. No matter what position you play now, you have to be able to think. And that's the part that you have to build into practice is quick, complex reasoning while your players are stretched physically to their max capacity. And to a certain extent, that's what the VR does. That's one of the reasons why we created it, is to be able to put players in that complex environment where you have to make a lot of really quick decisions, and you can be physically smoked, physically gassed at the same time, and you just get to run through it. And there's not 11 other players yelling at you or mad because you're screwing up. There's not a coach breathing down your neck because you're not making the right decision. You can work it out on your own.
So the virtual reality, I mean, I remember when I was a kid, Nintendo had a glove or maybe a thing that you could put over your head. And,
yeah.
I mean, there's virtual reality, there's augmented reality. What's the difference?
Yeah. So this is key because there's several different types of simulated environments now. And there's different ways of getting there, but they're not all equal from a performance perspective. So augmented reality is you have the real space that you physically occupy, and you're going to augment that physical space with something that's artificial. Let's say a drop-down menu or a Pokemon. Right? Pokemon Go, I think, puts the Pokemon in your real environment on your phone or whatever. So that's augmented reality. Virtual reality is an immersive reality where the entire environment is created. And there's a couple of different ways it can be created. It can be created by computer generated graphics. It can be, that try to look real. So if you think of CGI in movies, it might be something like that. It might be cartoon graphics, which you might think of like Madden football or something like that. And then there's what we use, which is real life VR. So we film real athletes. And that's critical when you start looking at VR as a training and performance tool. Because really what we're training, right, and this goes all the way down to what we do on the practice field, is we're training micro pattern recognition. So how quickly can we recognize micro patterns in our environment, whether a defensive lineman steps down, right? How quickly can we recognize that and apply meaning or the rules of our play to our opponent behavior? So to do that, you need real players. You need real life movement so you can start to apply meaning and reaction to those micro patterns. And that's what VR does. That's why it is such a great training tool. It allows you to run through those scenarios hundreds of times. You can get, so this was an interesting study one of our coaches did. In the month before spring ball, they counted their repetitions in VR. They got more repetitions in VR than a college quarterback normally gets his entire career in just 1 month. So if you think about the ability to recognize patterns, you're getting an entire career's worth of pattern recognition and decision making in a month in VR. You would never get that any other way.
Yes, I mean this morning on the morning podcast we do, I had one of my coaches on there and I asked him, like, dude, I watched The Matrix 20 years ago. I still don't know what it's about. And he started talking about it, and I said, well, it's based on real life then. It's true. So, like, what is The Matrix about? And, I mean, is it true? Like, you're getting into this virtual reality stuff. I mean, I remember a guy told me, Troy, MP3s are the future. Like, what? Like, dude, I don't even know what an MP3 is. One day, all files will be on an MP3 player. I guess Steve Jobs was just smart enough to say, we're going to put this into a iPod or whatever it was. I've had other people tell me things. So virtual reality, like the Matrix came out a long time ago. How did they know anything about this? And I mean,
well, it's been around forever, So I've been out of the service maybe 30 years from when I first went in, right? In my entire career, virtual reality was a training tool in the service. So it's been around for so long. The difference in the promise of VR, of virtual or augmented reality, has been around for 30 to 50 years. The difference is now it's accessible at the consumer level, right? When I first stepped into my first virtual trainer in the military, it was in a warehouse. Like it took a warehouse to house the computing power. The system that I developed, you run it off your laptop. And you don't even have to run it off that. You can run it off just the VR headset that MetaQuest sells as a standalone headset. So that's what's changed.
Yes. So, like, I met some guys at the American Football Coaches Association, and they had a virtual reality thing, and they were telling me that I had to buy the headset from them, which I didn't really understand, but sure. Like you're saying that your virtual reality, you can actually use Facebook's or Meta's goggles or whatever it's called. I don't know anything. So you're basically talking to the low man on the totem pole here.
Yeah. So when we developed the product, we used the Special Forces imperative that it has to be simple and you have to be able to find the material wherever you're at. Right? Because as a Special Forces guy, they would drop us, behind enemy lines or out in the middle of a jungle, and they just say, make it happen. Yeah. And with whatever you had around you, you had to make stuff happen. And that's what we apply to the VR system as well, to make it affordable and accessible and that was our corporate mission, our company mission, it was to make it accessible to the masses. We use off-the-shelf, over-the-counter hardware that anybody can get, and anybody can get relatively cheaply. So no, with our system, you don't have to buy anything special from us. We package a system for you, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you wanted to set it all up from scratch and just use our software, you could absolutely do that.
So talk a little bit about Bill Best being the offensive line coach at Colorado State, and he's how I met you.
Mm-hmm.
How is Bill using this in his program?
Yeah, so Bill's an innovator, and what he recognized is he needed to improve reaction time of his linemen and lineman decision making in a really, if you think about the position of linemen, their decision loop is really compressed because of the speed and the closeness of defenders. It's also fairly complex with defenses mixing things up. So he realized he wasn't getting enough practice time to do this, right? Because you need another body to do that. And so when he saw the VR, and we were actually doing our validity testing at Rice when he saw it, when he was coaching at Rice, he got interested in it. And we did some demos and beta testing with him when he was at Reno, and he really liked what it looked like, right? Because you've got to make fast decisions, and our system grades those decisions, right? So it's not like you're just watching it. Our system grades your performance, and so after every rep, you get a scorecard. Did you do this correct or not? And so when he went to Colorado State, it was one of the things that he was really interested in implementing on a pretty grand scale. So every one of his linemen has a VR headset. They film most of their practices and drills in 360, and then they load them into the rep system, embed the performance objectives that the linemen have to perform. And then those linemen can take the headset and go back to their dorm, back to their apartment, wherever they've got Wi-Fi, and they can continue to train.
Wow. So you have to have the camera too. And does that go on each of the players' helmets?
So that's what Bill does is, so we field the cameras with the system, and he puts a camera on just about every one of his linemen.
And they do this during drills, so not actually during like team.
No, they do it during team too.
So how do they keep from breaking the cameras? Do they keep their head out?
No. So we also field a camera case and a metal industrial strength case. So because you mount it right on the helmet, it keeps the camera from being broken.
Wow.
So we haven't broken a camera yet. We've broken UCLA. Yeah, the UCLA linebackers broke the mount where it attaches to the helmet, because that's plastic. They broke that, but nobody's broken a camera.
So Chip Kelly at UCLA, Jay Norvell at Colorado State is using this. Who else?
We've got about a dozen colleges from Division III to Division I, and then about 60 high schools throughout the country.
It's affordable enough for high schools.
That was our goal. It's got to be affordable enough for high schools, because that's really, if you're really trying, our goal as a company is to move the performance needle. As a Green Beret and as a Ranger, that was always, that's what I did every day. Is how can I make us incrementally better every day? And the need at the high school level is so great. And so our base product, we're like, we need to make this affordable so just about any high school in the country can get it. And I think we've done that.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at people who changed the world, like Amazon, like Walmart, like Huddle. I mean, Huddle changed the world not because they were selling it to colleges, but because they were making it affordable to high schools. So, I mean, if y'all follow that same model, I mean, really, just like Coach McNally going to Twitter, he's going to get his most impact by talking to high school coaches, talking to youth coaches, because there's more of them than there are guys coaching Division I and in the NFL.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm interested for you to share the website and, just show us like what it looks like and what would we have to learn. And man, I mean, this is the future, man. Like,
yeah, it is. It's going to be the future.
It's the present, really.
Yeah. And it'll be how we train from sports to industry, to whatever in the future, because there's just so much power in simulation, right? What I tell my athletes is nobody does stuff right the first time, right? But you do something 100 times and you're going to get it right.
Yes.
And one of the things that makes, if we go back to the military example, that makes our military so lethal is not our equipment. Our equipment's good, but it's not that. It's the way we train.
It's the process.
It's the process. And simulation is an important, it is an important leg of that training chair, because you can just get in it. It's very cheap. And it simulates the environment so well, and you can just rep through it until you master it.
Yeah, so I got your website pulled up here.
Yeah.
Just to talk a little bit about the Green Berets before you get going. I mean, y'all are the elite of the elite. I mean, and y'all are backed by the United States government, who I don't know what the budget is. It's in the trillions. The NFL has nothing on the United States government. The budget's unlimited almost. So you have worked with the best of the best. Like you said, the training, the reps, kids learn by reps.
Yes.
And everybody learns by reps. So
it's the performance constant, right? After genetics, if we're talking about sport, after genetics, then the number of what we call deep learning repetition, so the right type of repetition is the next most important thing to develop.
Unconscious competence.
Exactly.
That's what Bob Wiley called it. Unconscious competence. It's like we run ISO every single play to our sideline. Hopefully we can block ISO. It's big on big, and we got a fullback leading through the way.
Yeah.
Once you know something where you don't even have to think about it, I guess your training takes over.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's great that you mentioned that, right? Because on our YouTube channel, we've got a video of a quarterback getting to unconscious competence on a complex route in about 15 minutes. And it's a great story because the coach shared it with us, and he goes, this kid had never seen this route. We introduced it in VR. It just so happened that when we went out on the practice field that day, he got that rep. And this was an experienced coach. And he's like, usually a kid's going to mess that. This is a college level player is going to mess that read up or that play up for about 3 weeks before they get it right. This kid cycled through it on his first time. Like he got to his third read, complex read on first time on the field because he'd seen it a dozen times.
Yeah, I'm fired up. I wish I gave my guys 2 weeks off. I'm thinking, man, how can we get these headsets on these guys and start walking through? And if a coach like myself was to say, hey, man, we want to do it. Like, what do we do first?
Yeah, so you just contact reps. You contact me. We talk about what would be best suitable for your program, how many headsets, what do you want to accomplish. I send you a price quote, and as soon as you approve the price quote and the equipment that you want, we ship in about 2 weeks. So in under 2 weeks, you have it ready to go, everything installed at your school.
Okay, so once we get the stuff, like our first thing we put in is look pass. Like it's an uncovered number one. So do we have to go through look pass and actually rep it, and so we can video it? Is what I'm asking you.
So what you want to do is you'll want to film your practice. You just put the camera on the quarterback if that's the position you want to train, and you just run your practice and film it. You can also, and we've got schools that do this, you can script your installs. So if you can get your kids for 20 minutes before or after practice or in a free period, depending on what state you're in. Yeah,
we have no rules. We have no rules in Virginia. We can do whatever we want other than we can't practice on Sundays.
Yeah, perfect. So then you script it, and you can script an entire install in less than 20 minutes. It's so fast. And then you've always got it. And that's the thing that we hear from coaches is they're like, I'm filming this, and I'm like, and they start thinking, I never have to do this again because I've got this install that I can just keep passing down. When a new freshman comes in, he can hand him a headset and go learn day 1 and day 2 install before they ever step onto the field.
This is way past just having a digital playbook. You're having a virtual reality playbook. Yes. You're learning the play by doing the play.
By doing it. And that's
how kids learn. That's how everybody learns.
Yeah, it is. And that's the other thing that I would say is really the power of this system is if you think about the technology that's applied to football specifically, Most of it is to help the coach, right? The drone, the sideline cameras, huddle. I mean, that it helps the kid a little bit, right? Conceptually learn the plays, but really that's how the coach sees the field.
Mm-hmm.
Reps is how the player sees the field.
Yes.
And that is a huge difference, particularly in high school. Asking a player to look at, the drone view or the X's and O's whiteboard view and translate that to their view, that's asking a lot of a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kid. In college, it's a little bit easier, but it's still a tough ask. And by the pros, they've probably developed that capability, but it's still not from that player perspective.
Yeah, and I saw at the convention, there's, one company, they have a wall. I mean, and the wall costs $500,000. Like, most high schools are not going to be. You're going to sell a wall to Alabama. You're going to sell one to University of Florida, but you're really not going to sell many walls to high schools.
And I'll tell you what happens with the wall, right? So really interesting. So at the scientific level, what we're working towards is functional equivalence. So the ability that your brain fires the same way in that simulated training environment that it fires when you're on the field doing your task. So the wall won't do that. The brain doesn't fire. That the wall is still conceptual learning.
I mean, it's just like a whiteboard. It would be just like a
whiteboard.
Two-dimensional. It's two-dimensional.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, you've got to be able to have the brain fire in the same way, and you have to have real-time interaction with the environment. There's got to be consequence. There's got to be measured consequence. If there's not, the brain doesn't engage, the player doesn't learn. You're wasting your time on $1 million board.
Yeah, and I mean, the only way the way anybody learns is by making mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, just like you learn to ride a bike or you learn to walk. But I mean, when you're in elite special forces, there ain't no time for mistakes, especially
consequences are high.
Yes. I mean, and how do you learn? Or how did the United States government figure it out? Which I'm glad I'm a part of the greatest team in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Want some, get some.
Yeah.
So, and this is the reason that we're the greatest team in the world is because of this technology.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. And that training philosophy. We understand how to train. We do that better than anybody else. And I would say not by coincidence, a lot of it comes because our nation plays football. That's not by accident. The two cross-pollinate and feed each other. And so as kids, we're learning this very early, how to go through practice. And that's pretty unique. I know I always used to train my SF guys like a football team.
Yeah, so I mean, just my mentor was an Army Ranger. I sent you the picture of him eating glass. Yeah. He's the toughest coach of all time and the most loved, the hardest and the most loved. Rest in peace, Jimmy Rogers.
Yeah.
Ranger Rogers, coach. He ate the
awesome.
glass before the game, and he was hard.
Yeah.
And he made practice hard. And I mean, it's all about reps. I mean, it's a great name of a company because you're getting reps and you can get reps at any time. So what if a kid owns a headset at their house? Can they still get on reps and do it?
Absolutely. So are you able to navigate around the website?
Yeah, so you're allowed, you can navigate it.
Can I?
Yeah, because it's showing on your screen.
Okay. So you're seeing this?
Yeah, I'm seeing home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if a kid's got a headset at home, he can just go to our website, go to the shop page. And he scrolls down. And we have pre-made training packages for offensive linemen and quarterback. And so these were developed using college level players, developed by college level coaches, experts in their field. And the player can get into them and train, get unlimited reps. And there's anywhere from 60 to 150 individual training simulations in these packages, depending on which one you get. And then we've also got it for water polo as well.
So you've already got the pre-made for the quarterback and O-line?
Yes. And then we've also got a mental skills package to train cognitive speed. But yeah, most of our packages are for the quarterback and then for offensive linemen.
That's what I would want.
Yeah.
My only experience with virtual reality is when I coached at Virginia Union, the Richmond City Police Department. Their headquarters is right near the station. And this was around the time, I can't remember what happened, but a police officer had killed somebody, and they actually put us in there. And they put us in the situation where you're in a video game, but it's real people, and you're in a room. And, you know, it's all around the room. You're not wearing a headset, but it's walls, and there's video. And, you know, there's like a guy, you're a cop supposedly, and you have like a rubber gun. But, you know, there's somebody, you go to a domestic disturbance. And I remember the guy came running out with the hammer. And, like, I had to make a decision. Like, what do I do? And I shot him multiple times. And they said that was what you should have done, because the dude had a hammer and he could have killed me.
Right.
You know? So, I mean, you're going to get that same level of training with your football team.
Yeah, you know? It's even more so, because in this environment, like, it is not unusual to have a quarterback's brain so fooled that they're in real life that they throw the ball. Or we were showing this to a linebacker coach, and as soon as the play started, like, he shuffled his feet and did the fill, the gap fill right over a table. Yeah. Because it's all around you. Right? It feels real. And then what our system does is it grades by using the decision you make. It tracks your eyes, and then it grades on a decision window for how long that decision is available to be made. So if you think about a progression, right, that first read may only be open for a second or two.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So our system will grade that to 1/10 of a second.
I mean, can you show us on the screen? Are there any videos that you can click on that could show us what it looks like?
Let's see.
Like on y'all's website or anything? Is it a subscription based?
So the first year the software comes with the package that you buy. So the first year is free. You just buy the package, and then after the first year, it's a $99 annual subscription for the home version.
For the home version.
For the home version, which is what I just showed you there. The school system is also an annual subscription, but it's $1,000 a year annual subscription.
I mean, that's what Huddle costs. I mean, Huddle's more.
Yeah.
All right, so like I like this. I want to see this.
Yeah. So I'll pause it right here. So if you see this text tag in here where it says even.
Yes, sir.
So that's what we call a brevity code, and that's taken directly from how we trained in special operations. We assigned brevity codes to complex decisions or complex reads in the environment that meant something to how we were going to respond. So in this situation, He's reading the backer. He gives it an even call. And inside the headset, you don't see that. That's only on the coach's screen that you would see that brevity code or that decision code. Inside the player's headset, it just looks like the field of play. So you see there, it's full 360. And if I stop it here, if you look where it says markup, here are the 4 decisions that the quarterback has to make to be successful on this play. So he has to ID the front, he has to ID the slot defender, he has to identify the slot action, and then he has to make the right decision, which in this simulation is the bubble throw. And again, the player doesn't see any of this in their headset. They just have to play ball. So here, if I stop it, the slot action was a hang, meaning that bubble route was open. He's going to indicate the throw by saying bubble rip. And he's got to do that within the time window that was given for that decision, which was probably 2 seconds or less.
So it's through an audible command that you answer. It's not through your hand moving. I mean, we're not at that level yet. I mean, but that's
right.
How.
So we don't do that for a couple of reasons. One, that the learning that we're developing at the synaptic level, where the brain's synaptic connections are wiring together, is controlled by linguistics, by the words that we assign to things.
It's the words that pop in your head.
Exactly. And so why we're going with words is it reinforces the learning through that cognitive linguistic coding. It also forces programs to come up with a consistent language from players to coaches. And I will tell you, 90% of the coaches that we work with say that they have a consistent language.
They don't.
100% of the teams we work with don't.
It's like Dub Maddox in the R4 system. He studied He studied the elite of the elite.
Yeah.
You know, the guys, these are the real superheroes, man.
Yeah.
You know, I tell my kids all the time, these guys play Call of Duty and it ain't no respawning. It ain't no like
there's no reset.
Life. Yeah, it ain't no reset button. Like,
yeah,
they're the hardcore of the hardcore. And here's another thing I tell my players: why do they do it? And they're like, well, they do it for the country, they do it for the flag. I mean, you do it for the guy next to you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit about why you do it?
Yeah, it's a brotherhood. And that the brotherhood is very much like the feeling you feel on a team, you know, football team, basketball team, wrestling team, whatever it is.
Team.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and so those bonds are so tight that you don't want to let the other person down. And so you will go to extraordinary lengths, make extraordinary sacrifices so you don't let down the brotherhood. And when it comes to it, that's what you're fighting for. You know, there's always the love of the country. There's always, you know, the commitment to the mission and everything else. But it's the person to the left and right that, you know, that you sweat and bled and laughed and everything else. Yeah, that's why you do it. That's why you keep moving forward, right? When everything else in your body's telling you to go back, that's why you go forward.
Yeah, man, I'm sold. I mean, I think it's awesome. I mean, I know the U.S. Army has a virtual reality that they have, and you can put on a paper goggle or whatever, but it's cartoon.
Yeah.
It's
cartoon.
like it's not real. Like this is real.
This is real. And there's, it's a free system that they have, and it's designed to help their recruiting program, and you get that.
Player.
Yeah, and you get that. But this is a state of the art training system. The two aren't comparable.
No,
they're not comparable.
I mean, one uses a paper goggle and it's got a cartoon character.
Yeah.
And it's not designed by world-class coaches like Stanford and, our friend Bill Best.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and Dub Maddox created a package for this as well.
Wow.
Yeah, so hold on a second. Let's see.
Yeah, Dub's been on here twice.
Has he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if we had finished looking down here, there he is.
R4.
Yep. And we go to his camps. So we integrate with his camps. We have the VR system right on the field. Guys rotate from our station where they're learning to make those R4 decisions in real time, and then they'll rotate out onto the field and throw the patterns, throw the routes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is that an extra service that you buy to have the R4 package, or is that included?
So you go to his website and you actually buy the package from him.
Okay.
And so this graphic here, if you're on our website and you click on it, it'll take you to his website where you can buy the package. And then what happens is I get notified that an R4 package was purchased. I create the R4 account in Reps for that customer and send them a couple of onboarding emails and videos about how to train in virtual simulation. And then they just log on and start doing R4.
Man.
Yeah.
I'm blown away. I never even knew this occurred. I'm surprised that my friend Billy Mills at Dinwiddie doesn't have this. He might already have it. Because this guy, he practices 24/7, 365.
Does he?
I mean, yeah, and he wins state championships.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very surprised if he doesn't already have this. Because once he finds out about it, he will. Mm-hmm. He's going to want it.
Yeah. We've seen incredible results with it. Really, our company's 4 years old. We quickly jumped to the front of the VR simulation companies to lead the industry in high school and college sport VR simulation. And very quickly, it has been developed as the standard for how to train these kind of complex decisions.
Yeah. So is there anything else, Dutch, that you can think of that we haven't covered? I mean, we've been on here almost an hour, man. I mean, we could probably stay 5 hours and I still wouldn't learn it all. I mean, it's just, man. Yeah.
I would say adopt it earlier rather than later. Because if you wait, you're not waiting till next year. You're probably waiting a couple of years. And the reason I say that is the teams that are the early adopters, right? They're running with it now. They're winning championships with it now. And I forget our exact stat, but it's about 80% of our clients won their state championships or at least were in it. Bosco is one of our clients.
Which Bosco in California?
California Bosco.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
They're pretty good. If you wait, those schools are going to continue to draw the gap between you and them to where it's not a 1 or 2 year gap. It's like a 3 or 4 year gap before you catch them.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you want to cover here today? Or you think we're good?
I think we're good. It's been fun. I could talk about science and performance and the military all day. So I appreciate the opportunity to discuss it for an hour.
Let me ask you this.
It's a fun discussion.
Because I've asked doctors this question.
Mm-hmm.
When I go to football practice, I mean, it's almost like, have you ever seen Stranger Things?
I have.
Okay, it's like going to the upside down. And nothing else matters in the world.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, a nuclear bomb could go off. Like, anything can happen. Nothing else matters but what we're doing in that moment.
Yeah.
Is that called obsessiveness? What is that? Is it called going into the zone? I mean, you become a different person and you don't snap out of it. And when you come out of it, it's like my buddy said, get euphoric. I've been taught how to get into a euphoric mode because I was trained by a ranger. I mean, I think I could beat Mike Tyson. I know he's going to knock me out, but I think I can win. So what do you call that from your psychology and
for sure.
your elite training?
So I would say it's a form of flow state. But I'm going to caveat that by warning that oftentimes in sport, we hear about flow state as this kind of otherworldly, unknowable phenomenon, right? He was in the zone, right? And he was just unconscious. You can measure flow state. You can understand how to get into flow state.
How can you measure it?
Yeah. So what you're experiencing is a certain amount of manageable stress, right? As a coach, you have objectives to accomplish during the practice. There are forces that are working against those objectives, players and other coaches and the weather. And so there's some stress involved. And stress is, if it's manageable stress, it's a prerequisite for that flow state, because you have to have buy-in, you have to have skin in the game, you have to want to perform. So there's got to be stress. There's got to be engagement. You've got to want to do it. And you have to have the ability to perform at that level. So if you're missing any one of those three things that are all measurable, you're not going to be able to reach that flow state. So as an experienced coach, right, you have objectives that you want to accomplish. And so you have a certain amount of stress. You're engaged because you want to reach a certain level of perfection with your team. And you've been coaching long enough that you have the requisite coaching skill to be able to perform at that level in that environment. And so you're able to very quickly transition into that flow state where you're hyper-focused on the critical tasks that are going on around you. And that's the other thing that's important about understanding that flow state. It's not that you're unconscious. It's that you're so experienced in that environment, you know what the critical pieces of information are, and you key in on those and you filter all of the remaining distraction out. And that's also trainable with athletes, right? So I do performance coaching at Stanford and UCLA. You can train athletes to do that. That is a trainable skill. It's not some genetic gift. Some players are genetically gifted to do that, but every player can be trained to improve. And that's something that in special operations is embedded in every type of training we do. We intentionally train to build in those capabilities.
I mean, when you were talking at the beginning, when I was asking you about toughness, I just watched Air last night. And have you seen the movie about the Michael Jordan shoes?
I have. I love that movie. Great movie.
But the coach, the Nike guy. I mean, the Matt Damon's character.
Mm-hmm.
He said he knew because he watched Michael Jordan and how relaxed he was, and how he wasn't bothered, and how they didn't give the ball to James Worthy. I mean, it's exactly what you're talking about. And the same guy signed Jordan at Nike. He signed Kobe Bryant at Adidas, and he was at Adidas, and he tried to throw the house at LeBron James. I mean, I want to meet this guy. Because he has a special talent to be able to recognize, I don't know what it is, elite talent, guys that can go into the flow state.
Yeah.
I mean, what is it that he has?
It's that he's probably watched enough players, probably made a number of mistakes and learned from those mistakes to where he can get a sense of the player that is, 70 to 80% accurate. And that's probably good enough to be successful at his job. And I'd say, a great example of this, keeping Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant in mind. If you watch the series on, the Last Dance series about Michael Jordan and the Bulls, you can see how Michael intentionally manipulates the engagement and the stress and his abilities to stay in the flow state, game after game after game over that long career, and getting back to resiliency. It's a very good kind of how-to do that. And then if you look at any of the number of Kobe Bryant videos that you find on YouTube where he's talking about his mental state, he also talks about how to manufacture those flow states. And the thing I like about Kobe is he was so generous with his time before he passed. There's so many videos where he just, openly talks about how he trained and how he accomplished certain things that it's also almost a how-to if you go back and just listen to him talk.
Yeah.
Right. He talks about reps. He talks about getting up at 4:00 in the morning so he can get more reps. He's already an NBA champion. And he's still getting up at 4 a.m. to get more reps.
And it's not that same thing.
Yeah, it's not magic.
It's that 10,000 hours like that. Yeah. To become an expert, like have so many more hours put in.
Yeah.
Like you're really like older than you're supposed to be. Like, I don't know how to say that. You're like an old soul. It's like you might not have, it's like a quarterback. You said the guy got more reps than the guy in his entire career in one off season.
Yeah. Yeah. So his brain is now wired, right? If you scanned his brain in the areas that deal with quick decision making and pattern recognition, his brain is going to look like a fifth-year senior, not a sophomore. And that's measurable, right? We can put people on brain scanners and measure that. So it's not voodoo science. Like, it's real.
Yeah, it's real.
It's real.
And so I've enjoyed this so much. Thank you for coming on. I'm going to press end, but I want to still talk to you a little bit and ask you some more questions.
All right. Sounds good, man.
Thank you, Doc.
All right. Have a good one.